Next up, Bang the Table, talking about digital citizen participation, a true story of what not to do. Matthew Crozier is co-founder and CEO of Bang the Table, a company that for 8 years has been dedicated to helping government organizations to give their citizens a meaningful voice. Last year alone, Bang the Table software, EngagementHQ, was used in over 2,000 online citizen participation projects in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK. Matt, who spent 15 years working in the government sector, is here to bring Bang the Table and its practice-led approach to citizen participation to the USA. Without any further ado, Matt Crozier.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks, everybody. Just to be clear, because sometimes I know language across the world changes a bit. When we talk about citizen participation, what we do as a business and the only thing we do is help you guys, help government connect with the community to talk to them about the policy decisions or the things that affect their lives, and to measure in a meaningful way what they're saying to you. That's what I mean when I talk about citizen participation. And when I got this opportunity to come and talk to the government in California, which is kind of an amazing thing to do from where I'm from, I thought about doing what I usually do, which is talk about managing risk around citizen engagement or looking at the fine points of best practice. But I thought instead that I'd use a case study to talk about how to structure citizen engagement across a government so that it actually works. And I'll do that using an anonymized case study, because this is being videoed and the internet does spread these things. An anonymized case study of how we worked with a state government in a way that really didn't work too well. I learn a lot through my failures. I imagine I'm not the only one, and I don't think we always talk about them quite enough. So imagine the scene. A new state government selected. It wants to make its mark in terms of demonstrating that its dedication, and it was a very genuine dedication, still is, to getting the community participating more in the policy decisions it makes, and also to innovation more broadly. And so they put out, as part of a whole suite of measures, they went to market looking for a whole-of-government citizen engagement platform. We participated in the process, and our EngagementHQ platform was chosen by them. Our interface was through a central agency. So the central agency, this particular unit, had 4 very smart people in it. And they mandated that every department across that government must engage the community online using the platform. And so you had, I should have drawn it on a slide really, but you had us on one side, the 4 people in the middle, and all the agencies on the other side, and we set up. So what happened? Well, the slide will give you a clue. So look, the first thing to say is, on the positive side, over the next couple of years, there were a lot more opportunities for the community to get involved in the decisions of that government online. People didn't have to drive out to meetings, and they never do anyway, let's face it. We broadened the participation, a lot more than the usual suspects got involved. So that was really positive. There's no doubt about that. And it also set a culture in place in that across that government, in a lot of organisations, to be out there engaging. It kind of played down the risk. A lot of people in public service jobs, I'm sure all around the world, are quite risk averse and quite nervous about going out and being the first. And this was an imprimatur from the centre. It said, you must do this. So that was the positive side of the ledger. The negative side of the ledger, frankly, was, I think, lost opportunity. What we saw was a lot of very unengaging engagement. Opportunities to get involved in a project that were just done in such a non-engaging manner. Now, what Rob was saying before about the importance of the user experience is absolutely critical. And for us as software providers who've worked really hard over 8 years to build a platform that can really deliver an engaging experience, this was quite dispiriting. What I mean by not engaging was sites that were thoroughly text-based. I mean, not only can you embed multimedia and all sorts of things into every space in our platform, and we actively encourage you when you set up your sites to do that, but we saw sites that were 15 paragraphs of text before you actually even got to an area where you could could interact. So people were having to scroll down all this text, which straight away makes it really poor for mobile devices and various other things. We saw agencies not adhering to accessibility guidelines, and we saw really unengaging engagement. I keep saying that, and I'm just tying myself in a circle, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is we have 9 engagement tools in the platform, and surveys were just used over and over again. Now, there's nothing wrong with a good survey. Everybody loves a good survey, but it's not particularly exciting. Nobody was using the mapping, the storytelling, the moderated discussion forums, the ideation, the sort of brainstorming tools. Nobody was using the really innovative stuff, or at least we weren't seeing them used much. And that's where the engagement comes from. It's a mixture for me of the look, getting that rich media in there, not making it too text heavy, making it interesting and exciting, and as Rob said, appropriate to audience. But also in those opportunities to give feedback and making sure that they're appropriate and they're engaging and they're interesting and they're fun to interact with. So it just wasn't happening. And look, we spent a lot of time working through the unit of 4 people, doing training sessions and trying, issuing guidelines. And these guys were seriously committed. I'm not by any means deriding our clients. They were really working hard at this as well. But after 2 years, we concluded that it wasn't working, and we took the unusual step of declining to renew the contract and stepping away, which felt quite brave to us at the time. Now, the lessons from this, and I actually sat down with the executive director from the department before I flew over here and went through what I'm going to say, and he was pretty much in agreement with me. I think the first is, and it's very hard for me to ascribe human motive, so I've got to be a bit careful, but what we saw was that the line agencies and the project teams and the individual teams that were using this whole of government platform weren't taking the same pride in it that they do when it's their platform. And in fact, we now work with lots of those agencies on a one-on-one basis, and they take enormous pride and care in what they do, and we get superbly engaging sites. And if I have got time, I'll tell you about one afterwards. If not, you'll have to come and find me. And so what I think is that when it's not your site, when it belongs to this whole big thing that sits outside your immediate sphere of influence, you just chuck something up. It's sort of like, we've got to do this. And they're saying, we're doing it because we've got to do it. So, we'll just do it. And not that sense of pride and care. And also those people didn't own the community. I think that the big benefit of online participation is you are actually building community. You're building people's participation in whatever it is that your endeavour is. And of course, this was all owned centrally and didn't now. We've tried to address this with technology. We've built out some of our database functions so you can now target groups of interest within your overall database. But I do think ultimately there's an issue of branding and pride that individual organisations have, and I think that's important. The second lesson, I think, applies to the community. We didn't see quite as many people coming back and being active. The typical characteristic is, they sign up, get involved in a project, go away again, and we didn't really see people reactivating as we would hope to. Now again, when we work with smaller organisations, we see a lot of activism. We see, big databases of people and people reactivating and getting involved in all sorts of issues, which of course makes your jobs easier over time because it becomes easier to hear from a cross-section of demographics. It wasn't happening as much. And I think, again, this is to do with scale. I've written some papers that confuse people thoroughly, saying that local doesn't have to be geographic anymore, and all the best engagement is local. And I suppose what I mean is, we all know that if you're working with a municipality, you can engage the community, and they're inherently interested because they live there. And similarly, if you're doing something at a state or a national scale, like we did a national cultural policy a while ago, we were talking to a community of interest scattered right across Australia in this case, but they were all passionate about the arts and they were like a local community. And I think that really good engagement is done at the level of a local community of interest. And so I often implore governments not to think about whole of government, and not even necessarily to think about department structures, but to have a space for transport, for environment, for health, for employment, for all those things that people can be passionate around and coalesce around. And, really, I've run out of superlatives, but I think you probably get what I mean. The third lesson was about that unit of 4 between us and the ultimate clients. And I think this is important. as a private sector business, we can scale. We're all about giving support and good advice, and we only do one thing, and we do it rather well, and we've been doing it for a long time. So we can hold the hands of our clients and get great results. It's not unusual to get a call from us saying, we see you've launched this site, have you considered just changing this bit around, or whatever it might be. We try and do that on an ongoing basis, but putting an office between us and the ultimate user kind of stop that flow of information and stop that relationship. And although those people worked really hard, very hard in fact, to make this work, government can't scale like the private sector can. You know, if I have need to, I can go and employ new people fairly quickly. Governments, I don't know about here, but we're forever getting recruitment freezes and things like that. One of the hardest things to do in government is often hire new staff, and it just didn't work. And so one of the lessons I think is that your provider, who should be expert at engaging citizens online, needs to have access to the people who are actually doing the work. And the final thing, and I do think it's possibly the most important, is that this stifled innovation. Now I like to think we continue to innovate, and of course we have markets beyond one state, and so, but having whole of government all-encompassing contract meant that everybody had to use our software. And it blocked out everybody else. Now, this does two things. Firstly, it means that the government itself is kind of stuck with us, which I think is a good thing, but they may not have. And but the other side of it is it meant that small businesses, and this is a really innovative sector. The GovTech sector is there's a lot of innovation going on. There's no clearly dominant player in the market, and a lot of the innovation's happening right here in your state, of course. But if you find that there's a whole of government contract in place and you are running a little innovative startup, as happened in this particular state I'm talking about, there's no way in. You're blocked out of your home market, and that's a big thing. And I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. And so I think innovation is much better served by not doing these sort of single monolithic contracts, but by actually allowing organisations to operate within a set of overall standards. That's probably stating the obvious, but I think it's important. And the happy ending. So every story has to have a happy ending. And look, it was good. When we parted ways with our overall government contract, it was done, with the support of our friends in the unit, and we have since started working with over 20 agencies across the state, and it's worked out really well, and we're now seeing some superb examples of engagement. And if I can take 10 seconds on one, and I'd really encourage you to come to our stand in the trade show so we can show you some of this stuff live, show you what's great, and we won't show you what's not great, but you'll imagine that. There was an engagement done just recently on the thorny issue of culling wild horses. In our national parks, we have wild horses, one particularly the Snowy Mountains National Park, which is very iconic in Australia. The horses were causing a lot of environmental damage. And what the park rangers usually do is cull them by shooting them out of helicopters, which is an emotive issue. Now, these guys went live with a site, and what they did was quite amazing. They started with storytelling, asking people to tell their stories about the issue. And there was a lot of passion from both environmentalists and horse lovers, telling their stories, sharing their photos in a unchallenged environment. And that set up a culture of respect. They then ran moderated discussion forums with videos instead of questions. And the videos were people talking about their views. And it led to really respectful, strong discussion, high levels of engagement, a really successful engagement. And that department took a lot of pride in what they did. And I thought it was a great example of what I've seen. Just finally, the other thing that's happened in innovation terms is that, sure enough, other players have entered the market. It's not just us anymore, which causes me a little pain. But some of these small players coming through have really niche, innovative products that we were never going to build. We work with governments around the world, and we do the 90%, not the 10%. And these small businesses have come up with these beautiful products, and actually 2 of them we now partner with, and their products are available through our marketplace. And that innovation has started to happen in a culture where I think we're seeing more engagement, better engagement, by actually bringing it down to that issue level. So I hope that's kind of useful for you. I'd love to chat to you all later. And if you want me to talk about some of the risk and practice stuff, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.